That is so funny. Afro Latinas, yes, in the house. Okay, Viva
Yes,
Puerto Rico.
yes.
Okay, we have
That's
it.
right.
Okay. Let's see. Michelle said Rakia is in here, but she's not being seen as a panelist. But I don't even see her as an attendee. And I think, let's see. I think Michelle, you are logged in about 3 times, so I don't know if you're logging in as Rakia, but I needed to show up as Rakia because she received a unique link. So we got one more, guys, and then we're gonna get this show on the road. So I appreciate you all being patient with us. So
and congratulations. I just shout out, like I just saw that Candice just like got some $5 million into her bank account for her fund. So
congratulations.
Welcome,
awesome.
Candice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice.
that's why she was late. She was hustling, taking
Right.
numbers and names.
Making sure the wire.
Make sure that wire actually
on the
hits.
wire.
Exactly. So you know it's real. So you know it's real. Okay.
You want me to
All
kick
right,
off? You ready?
Rakia is trying to still get on. So I don't know if you
Okay.
want to go ahead and start Preston.
There she
Oh, there she is. Yay. Okay.
I'm on, Kaylin. I'm on.
All right, Rakia,
All right,
we
thank
see you.
Okay.
There
Hi.
we have the whole panel here. Okay, welcome, Rakia. I know I'm telling you, it's Mercury retrograde. I don't know what's happening. Thanks for working with us, Rakia. All right, we have everybody here and we have got people all over here in the chat. So thank you all for being so patient with us. And we are going to go ahead and get this started because I know you want to hear from these amazing ladies because I do too. I'm like girl fanning over here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So Preston, you're going to kick it off for us.
Yes, I am. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning. If you are there from somewhere else in the morning, just so excited to have everyone here this evening. My name is Preston James. I am the CEO and co-founder of DaVinc. And again, I'm just so delighted not to have just all of you here, but I have 4 dear friends that are panelists tonight, and I haven't seen them in like a year, right? And so it's like this virtual homecoming. It don't have to do, but it's really good to have all of them here tonight. I don't want to take up too much time because I want to get to the ladies and the sisters and let them have the sister talk and let y'all answer questions. But I just wanted to, to share here's just a few insights from my perspective. Like I said, tonight feels like sort of like a homecoming, for me, because last year, right about this time, we were about to set things off for South by Southwest in 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, we were about to set it off. We had several hundred of you, several hundred startup sisters were about to converge in Austin at this Startup Sisters event. And the event was entitled "And Still I Rise." And so we were about to just let it loose. And then COVID-19 changed our plans. Not only did it change the plans, but it changed America, it changed the world. And we didn't get a chance to hang out. So, long story short, I miss y'all. I really miss y'all, and I just want to, say it again because I think it's even more applicable today than it was last year. Even though we miss each other last year, but still we rise. Here it is in 2021. And so I thank y'all for coming this evening. Very quickly, for those who are not familiar with DaVinc, we are a startup ecosystem builder. We started here in Austin, and our core program is a 12-week startup accelerator for early stage tech startups founded by underrepresented founders. We've been doing this twice a year, 10 companies in each one of those programs. And we've been doing this since 2016. So, we've helped 63 companies launch or accelerate in that time period. And so we're operating with a sense of urgency because we got things to do, right? And things to move. Our goal in life is we want to remove barriers, and generate equity in entrepreneurship. And when we do that in collaboration with some of our partners that our friends here tonight on the panel and many, many others across the country. But, more specifically, we are trying to put the infrastructure and the foundation and the community and network of support for underrepresented founders so that they can be successful and contribute at a higher level in terms of innovation, economic mobility, wealth generation, job creation, and so forth. And so, so we continue to evolve our programming, where we have alumni programming, and Startup Sistas is one of those programs that we actually started launching in 2018, sort of as a small happy hour dinner amongst sisters. And I was the only brother there. And it has grown organically since that point in time. And we're looking to continue to scale it, not just in Austin or Texas, but we want to scale that nationally so we can support, sisters in their entrepreneurship efforts. And not just the entrepreneurs, but also the investors, the mentors, the talent pool that want to be part of the startup community. We want to create opportunities for you as well. So with all that said, I'm just going to cut short and just want to thank, before I pass it over to Joy, I want to thank our sponsors this evening. Bumble, all of you, if you're not aware, Bumble just recently went IPO. There's a women-led company. Whitney Hurd stood up at NASDAQ with her young baby on her side on the hip. So she sent a message to the world that women will not be stopped. So Bumble, congratulations, and thank you for supporting us this evening. Dell Technologies. Yep, I was with Dell for 20 years. So it's an honor, and I'm proud to have Dell support us this evening and support women of color entrepreneurs. And then last but not least, Salesforce.com. And as many of you may or may not know, Salesforce has been a force for women of color entrepreneurs, really supporting them, putting their money where their mouth is, and really, getting behind women entrepreneurship over the last year or even before then. So thank you to Salesforce. So with that, I want to introduce, and before let me make this introduction right now. So we started in Austin, we expanded to Houston in January. And I'm just so proud and so happy that, as part of our new team in Houston, I was able to bring, Joy M. Hutton to the Div Inc. team. And so she will be running our programs in Houston. So without further ado, let me introduce the one and only Joy M. Hutton. And I'll let you take it away, and let's get on with the panel.
Yes, thank you so much, Preston. Always a rumbling introduction. So thank you. And I'm so excited about this panel that we have in front of us. So, give Preston a round of applause for the work that he is doing with Div Inc. and for, curating such an amazing group of women, because Preston likes to be surrounded by the ladies. Let's just be clear, so, but it's just so wonderful to be surrounded by you all. I wish we were in person, but maybe next year, but we'll go ahead and get into it. And so I want to just start because each of you all has such a unique and inspiring story. And if you all don't know who is on your screen, you need to Google them because they are some boss women. And so we can just start from left to right. I guess who's on my screen. We'll start with Lolita. And so I just want to start with, can you share a little bit about your journey with us? And then if you told your 25-year-old self that is what you'd be doing, would you have believed you?
Yeah, first off, thank you so much. I am so energized by this panel altogether. So thank you again for hosting this. And it's so important to get us all together in community. So my background starts with my parents immigrating from Mexico from their little farms to the US to give their future kids a shot at the American dream. And unfortunately, my dad didn't get to see what I ended up becoming because he passed away over a decade ago now. But he went through a sewer tunnel so that he could illegally immigrate to this country and later became a citizen. But it was a tough journey. Grew up in South Central. My dad and my mom actually turned a garage into a 1-bedroom apartment, and that's where my journey began in South Central Los Angeles. Fast forward, I was the first to graduate from college, first to break the poverty cycle in our family, first one to get a corporate job, go to startups, find out that there's these things called VCs that invest in the future and in amazing people and companies. And that kind of led me to explore this concept of wait a minute, why aren't there enough women and people of color writing checks and into companies that are solving the problems that we have? And so I made a conscious effort to become a check writer. And it's been a tough journey. I think if you ask anyone who's gotten into or is in VC, it's just like you're always hustling. But I think it's a good, not only a good cause because it brings up representation, but because it's good business. There's so much money being left on the table. And I'm just happy to be part of this community of very progressive and really a new era and community of investors. And I'm inspired by all of them. And, Candice and Shila are two of them and super excited. So long story short, now I'm an operator and an investor. I'm interim head of sales at a Series A startup. And at the same time, I'm co-founder and general partner at the community fund where we invest in pre-seed and seed startups that are community driven. And in terms of what would I have told myself, or would I have believed myself that I would be a venture capitalist? I think I would be like, what is that? I think would be more or less what I would tell myself. I don't know if I could become something. I don't even know what it is. But I'm excited to be part of this ecosystem and rise together.
Great, thank you. And she still looks 25, so she probably told herself that yesterday. Thank you, Lolita. Shila, you're up next.
So I am just a woman from a small town in Florida with a father from Puerto Rico, came here as they call seasonal work, met my mom, they created this beautiful family. And for us, it was just about the working class, doing a good job and then having good the benefits from that. And so just fast forward, none of this, my path, my professional path, my personal path, none of it prepared me for this. And so I am a problem solver. That's why I'm here. And so I got into this space because an entrepreneur wanted to raise capital and wanted someone like me to help him do that. I didn't know what that meant. I knew that I was a great connector. And so I jumped both feet in while I had a company that I was running and decided to help this entrepreneur out. So kudos to him for offering me what I consider now to be my legacy, because I had no idea that I would be doing this sort of work. I knew that I was a great community sort of person, driven by folks in the community, mostly marginalized communities. And so here I am 3 years later with the fund, a $25 million fund, investing in diverse entrepreneurs who are creating tech-enabled solutions, primarily here in the South. What I would have told my 25-year-old self, we definitely wouldn't have been talking about this because venture capital was nowhere on my roadmap to success. It was never a conversation ever had with me. I've taken financial courses. I remember in high school going to Merrill Lynch and talking about, stocks and bonds and stuff like that. But no one ever said to me, this is a career path for you. More or less, it was about how you can sort of save your money. And so I'm really happy to be here. And I think my story, unlike Lolita's, and I'm sure Candice and Rakia, when she comes up, we came on an untraditional path. And so we saw a problem, we wanted to solve it. And so I think that's mainly why we're here. None of us came from financial backgrounds where we're like, okay, venture capital, I'm gonna be rich and make money. And while we want to do that at the same time, we also want to invest in great companies. And for me, my ultimate goal is to close the racial wealth gap in this country. And so that for me is the most important part of this work. And thanks for having me.
Yes, I love it. Thank you. Candice?
Awesome. So Candice Matthews Brackeen. Similar story to these ladies. I come from a pretty humble hey, Preston. I come from a pretty humble upbringing. Yeah, no reason to belabor the point, but went to the University of Cincinnati, studied economics and statistics, spent about 13 years consulting in small to medium-sized businesses. And then about 7 years ago, got the startup bug, raised some venture capital. And as I was running out of money, along with the rest of the country, we were really hearing the numbers about who was getting venture capital and who wasn't. And that kind of like it all made sense then, because to that point, I felt like I was winning in my professional career. And so 5 years ago, started an accelerator here locally. At the time, it was called Hillman Accelerator. Now it's Lightship Accelerator. And so we're now in our 5th year. We support BIPOC founders, those who identify as women, LGBTQ, IEP, plus those who are disabled. I've run a few programs, so Lightship Accelerator, Lightship Bootcamp, which used to be called Numi, a little show called Twitch Pitch that we run on Twitch and a few other streaming stations, as well as a couple of funds. So not only do I run Lightship Foundation, but also Lightship Capital, which has now 2 funds, a $50 million fund focused on the mighty middle of the country, and a $10 million fund focused strictly on pre-seed companies in the state of Ohio. You'll hear about a few more soon. We've got some other funds that we're standing up. So it's been a fantastic year of fundraising. What would I have told my 25-year-old self, or would she believe me? I've always done something different, so this is something different. So she would be surprised at what, but not that I was doing something big, because it was always something big and bigger.
I love it. Thank you, Candice. Rakia?
Yes. Well, first I want to say, when you said it's a homecoming, Preston, I felt that in my soul and in my spirit. I was like, okay, this is a homecoming. I want to thank you for, allowing me to be just among some amazing women. I loved everyone's stories, and I love the question, because I think I'll start with the part about what I would have told my 25-year-old self, because I think, as Shila mentioned, taking this nonlinear route to get where I am today. At 25, I was a young mother. To me, that's a young mother. My daughter at that time was 1. And it's funny that the name of the panel last year was going to be Still I Rise. I was looking the other day at my yearbook in high school, and my tagline, like under my picture, it says Still I Rise. And I think sometimes we forget the power of words and the economy of words. And I think I was rushing in high school to just put something down. Like, well, let me just put something down. And I, known the poem, and I just put that down. And I think I spoke that into existence. I think I may have carved out the harder path for myself. And so, when I was 25, having a 1-year-old, I think I would have told myself at that time that, it's going to be all right. I still tell myself to this day, it's going to be all right, because I think all of us wear some very heavy crowns in the work that we do. I started my path through a series of unfortunate events. I had delusions of grandeur that I was going to be on a set in Hollywood making big movies. I was a TV producer, content producer. Now we call them content producers, but I was a television producer. I was a magazine producer. I worked in the world of public relations. And then I started my agency, taking all of the things that I had learned in TV and magazines and sort of put them into this bowl and mix them into this company that I call Sky Blue Media, which is a multimedia communications agency that separates our work into people, products, and places, working in the space of equity and communications. And you know, the inclusivity of language. I mean, our work sort of goes beyond the traditional public relations, but how do we make people consumers and people of the like to make them feel like they belong and they matter in all of the stories that are being told today. So a little bit of me is still producing and doing the content producing, still doing all of the writing. It's just in a different medium. And instead of doing it for Hollywood sets, I'm doing it for the people that are sitting in front of their Zooms at this very minute.
And doing it very well. So speaking about the people, thank you, Rakia. I know you all can relate to building a community, and you know, it can be kind of lonely out there as women of color leaders, especially, which you all are. How do you cope? How do you bounce back? What gets you through it? And who do you lean on? Because, you know, we have different setbacks, we have traumas that we experience. So what's your coping mechanism? How do you build a tribe around you when you're trying to build that safety net?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that really this is all more good than negative, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of challenges in what we do, but there are a lot of moments where we're winning and we're winning big. And so, yes, I think we all have some collective trauma through those situations, but more often than not, we have lots of people who are helping us through this process. More now today than we did before 2020, right? So like post George Floyd's murder or pre George Floyd's murder, I would say this work was a lot harder than it is now. I think that all eyes are on the disparity in the type of work that we're doing. And we have all gotten a second glance again at the hard work that we've been doing for so long. So I would say, how do I get through it? I mean, I hope we all have a therapist. I see my therapist regularly. I think we have to normalize that mental health has to be a priority. I have an amazing team. They get me through all of this. So anything you see that it looks like I won, it was actually them. So there is no Candice and there is no Lightship Capital without my other 14 employees. Those folks are the ones that really are winning. And then, I mean, I have to say, I do have a pretty amazing spouse too.
So I was going to say, so I came out in this space totally, you know, like unknown, right? So meaning here I am saying, I want to do this for entrepreneurs, and people were like, who are you? What are you doing? You know? And so I had to actually build my own ecosystem, meaning I started out having events in New York. I started having these founder roadmap forums. And I said, whoever comes, that's who I'm going to welcome under what I consider my big tent. And so I began to, for me, once I decided I was going to raise a venture fund, it's always important for me to, first of all, see someone who looks like me. And then I want to know who's the best in my city, because I want that person on my team. And so I Googled, really, I wasn't in the space, so I didn't know Arlen Hamilton at the time, but she was everywhere in 2018 on every magazine cover. And so I was like, I got that check. And then I need to get a little bit more local. And that's when I found, you know, I always say this old white man to people, but this guy who's the most prolific investor here in Atlanta. His name is Sig Mosley. And I asked him for coffee. And I said, I had this particular deal. I shot the deal. He wasn't interested in the deal, but I was like, well, could you continue to meet with me and advise me? And he did. And from that, I built an entire an entire advisory of people who were good people that wanted to see this through. Now, we would talk several times. Shila, are you sure you want to raise a venture fund? Absolutely. And this is how I'm going to do it. So what I just started to was bring people in. People who were interested in the work were, former colleagues of mine and that sort of stuff. So it actually built our own diverse ecosystem, not leaving other folks out. We still want people to come in, but we just decided to do it that way. And so my team highly, just so thankful for the people who come in and volunteer their time, and then the people who are on our partnership team. And then I have an amazing group of advisors that support me. And then I have a family. COVID has shown me so much more about how important family is when you're having these dreams. People see me. They don't see my husband who's helping me, who's actually bootstrapping this for us to be successful. They just see Shila they saw Shila on a plane here and there, and that's all they knew. There is a whole squad behind me, and I'm so grateful. I cannot stand here and say it's me, it's me, it's me. I started it, but I'm thankful for the people who got on board and sort of helped drive this ship for me. I'm not a passenger, but I'm definitely letting somebody else kind of help me steer this ship. And so really grateful for just the number of people who decided to take a chance and take a risk and be a part of Zane.
Amen to that. So I have to say, yes, upvoting spouse and therapy. I'll have to add walks, and having a cute puppy helps a lot. And then definitely 100% the community, not only the one that exists around us, but the ones that we go out and build. I mean, honestly, if you ask me how I've made a lot of my friends, it's been on Twitter. And in fact, I do rely on the Twitter community more than you all probably imagine. So sometimes I might tweet and I'm literally like, I have a migraine and I feel shitty today. And because the thing is that there can be an illusion of we're these superhuman people. And that's just not the case. We are like human. Some of us don't shower every day, because it's COVID, but, and we have bad days, we have good days. And to me, so much of, everybody like on the team, the community fund, we're 13, and there's different elements and collaborations. And it's just that energy. Honestly, if you ask me, like at the end of it, what is it that keeps me going? It's that energy of there is a group of us that have a vision of a better world. Where we're making a lot of money too, where we're increasing the number of dollars going into underestimated founders, where we're increasing the number of check writers that come from underestimated communities. And that just gets me excited. And there are going to be a lot of bumps in the road. And you know what I just keep doing is giving to the community, because it just gives back like tenfold. And on that note, I will say this, because it's kind of funny, but it's also really true. The community fund could not have happened without the incredible support of my Twitter family and newsletter community. It was through Twitter that I met my co-founder, who I have yet to meet in person. And we have this $5 million fund. And this is the start of the community fund. And we were able to recruit 12 other members to our team as investment partners. And when we did that, I was so excited because we brought together people who are representative of our population. But before that, they're just really badass investors who happen to be representative of our population. And that is wins like that are amazing. And when I see people giving to each other, paying it forward, because none of us can do any of what we're doing alone, that makes me so, so, so happy. So thank you, and keep giving and keep being awesome, because we could not be here without you.
Awesome. Rakia, did you want to say anything?
Sure. I mean, I would say I'd sort of underscore what everyone else was saying, but I have a rhythm to sort of manage the chaos of my creativity. I always say there's a chaos to the creativity. But I see my therapist regularly. So like every Friday at 8 o'clock. I actually recently started seeing a sports massage therapist where I do stretching. So she actually stretches my body because we're sitting in our seats all day, and I do walking. I am an energy person, so I believe in having the 4 elements around me. And so I bought a house intentionally where it is surrounded by a stream. I'm surrounded by trees. I have to have that. And then I do have my husband and 3 lovely kids who always have me laughing. They know when I'm really serious. And I know that there are times when we can't get away from our desks. My husband will bring me like an egg sandwich, or he'll bring me like water. He keeps that. And so I think, the filling of the cup. And then I have amazing people around me, like the team that I work with. My former chief of staff would always say, I have a friend-tor advisory board. So they're friends and mentors. So everyone, mentors and sponsors, but sometimes the friend-tors are the ones that will say, no, that idea is not so hot. And I'm sorry, I don't like what you said. And so those are the people that sort of challenge the things that you say. And I think for me personally, I like for people to either correct or challenge the things that I say, because I'm a constant learner. I don't think that I've ever mastered anything, or, even the question, Joy, like, how do we cope with it? I still learn. I think every few years or every few months, there's something new that I introduce to my life to sort of figure out, okay, this is where I was before, this is where I am now, this is what's working now, but all of these things may not work in another few weeks or another few months. So it's ever evolving and ever changing. But I loved everyone's responses, because I think we all sort of are cut from that same cloth of building teams and building really great people around us, and then making sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
Wait, I'd love to add one more thing to what Rakia said, because I don't think we emphasize this enough. But one of the best gifts in going through any journey, no matter whether you're VC, founder, or anything, is feedback, constructive feedback that you get from people. It's wonderful to hear, you're awesome, you're great, congratulations. But the best gift is always like, hey, did you know you could do it this way? Can you do it smarter, scrappier? And here's how. And by the way, can I connect you with this person? They could make your life a lot easier. Like, it's this kind of stuff that really helps us out. And that's why I'm grateful for all of those of you who are about giving first, which also happens to be the Techstars slogan. I am a Techstars mentor, but I also really do believe that giving first and feedback is one of the biggest gifts you could ever give anybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lolita. And I think receiving that feedback, right? Because sometimes we get in our feelings and we have egos. And so being able to receive that feedback as well. And I love the idea of the friend tour. I think I might steal that, Rakia. I love that. But also, I am a huge advocate of therapy as well. And I think that a lot of people think, we have to put the face on, right? We have to put this public face on, and social media makes everything look great, but you don't know that people are rolling on the floor and crying their eyes out at night because of the stress that they're under. So I think it's also realizing that it is okay not to be okay, and getting the help that you need to work through these situations. So, and so speaking about that, because everything that glitters is not gold. Yes, we have wins to celebrate here because you all are amazing, but people all also want to know, what are some of the roadblocks that you experience? Candice, you had this $50 million fund, and Lolita, you have this $5 million fund, the community fund. So it's still big. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't do it. But these are major. And so, and Shila, and Rakia, building multi-million-dollar enterprises. So what are some of the roadblocks that you have encountered along your journey? And I know that's a big question, right? I know Rakia is like that. This is going to take all day. She's like, really, Joy, it's going to take me about 82 minutes to answer this question. But, some of them, just some of them.
So I'll say for me, like, it was really surprising very early on that, and they were white women who said to me, I shouldn't raise a fund because they tried 20 something years ago and it was hard, and, I shouldn't do. And I was like dumbfounded because I went to them for advice to tell me I feel like I have some momentum behind me. I'm in the Southeast. We feel like we have something special. And so I was dumbfounded. And, for a second, I thought, well, maybe, because one even said to me, you're good at events. Why don't you stick to events? And no one has ever told me to stick. That's just like saying, shut up and dribble. You don't tell me to just stick to events. I can do both. And so I did. I decided I'm going to do my forums, and I'm going to go out and learn about raising a venture fund. And so while it may have seemed like a tiny roadblock, at that moment, I was like, I'm just going to bulldoze all the way past this. Yes, maybe it was hard for them. This is going to be hard for me too, but hell, I can do hard. I think we've done a lot of hard. I've done a lot of hard already. So that wasn't the issue. It was just mainly getting people to believe and buy into what we were, looking to do. This was a couple of years ago. And so along the way, COVID, of course, we can all say was the roadblock, especially for us. We had a significant investor lead, and we were heading into 2020 with, sort of the wind beneath our wings. We had a big event planned in New York, and then COVID hit. And I had to quickly pivot because it was like, who's going to listen to you on Zoom? And I have an old school partner. So he was like, I'm a handshake guy. Nobody's going to listen to you. You got to figure out a way to do this. And I had to double down and say, okay, I can't let COVID be the reason why I'm not going to do this. If anything, I'm going to let it accelerate what we're doing, because right now we see people are in crises. And, unfortunately, George Ford, to Candice's point earlier, it brought some attention, but it quickly faded after a while. People came, they came in droves, and then it was like, okay, well, where are they? So I had to still continue to double down if I'm going to do this. And we did. And we just got a 7-figure commit 2 weeks ago. So I know I'm in the right place. If I would have listened to those 2 women and said to me, oh, go back to doing events, I would have been doing events only. But now we're doing events. We have an entire programmatic arm that is set up to ensure success for diverse entrepreneurs, while also raising a venture fund. We're on the precipice of our first close. And so I don't allow what someone else says to me to be a roadblock. If anything, that's the fire that you just lit in me. And not that I'm trying to prove anything to anybody. I am here for the diverse entrepreneurs who are in my care. They deserve every fight that's in me, not some passive woman saying to me, not today, you stick with me. I wasn't successful, so you can't be successful. And so I didn't allow it to become a roadblock. I allowed it to accelerate the work that I'm doing. Sorry for all that.
No,
Yes.
that's great. Like
Snaps.
we all hear
Yes.
so much bias, and what people cannot imagine, they say you cannot do, or if they have not done it, then they say the same. And all I have to say to that is there's 2 ways we can think about it. One is you can take it and believe them, or you can just say, screw it. What do you have to lose? Like, let's just go the whole way. Because like Candice said, if I'm going to do something, it's going to be big, right? And I think definitely bias is the biggest one that I could see, unconscious bias in particular. I was so excited about this panel because, unconscious bias is such a weird thing. There are so many good people, great allies, even allies will have unconscious bias, and they will say things and do things that are just like, why are you stabbing me in the heart? Like, and it's just things that, well, you can't do that, or that doesn't work this way, or this can't happen, or you don't have these pedigree or check boxes or whatever. And we all get that in one shape or another. And I can tell you that at the beginning of my career, it really got me down, and it made me think like, I need to check all these boxes that everybody is giving me. And there's this shift of moving this, what do they call it? The shifting pole. What is it? I forget the phrase. Anyway.
The goalpost.
The goalpost. There you go. I am also dyslexic. And so this is a challenge for me as well. But the goalpost. So it just keeps moving for us. And I thought it happened to everybody. But as it turns out, if you ever hear someone say, well, if you do this, then maybe I'll believe it. Or if you do this other thing, it'll be like, it actually is a biased thing. So there are people that actually don't hear that. They're just like, oh, yes, of course, you're wonderful. Look at you. You're going to be great success. They look at us and they're like, who are you? Ha, ha, ha. And wait, you're a woman? So what philanthropic organization are you working on? And what? Actually, I will tell you one story because this is very recent. I had a very notable venture capitalist who is an ally say to me, Lolita, I'm really concerned that the way that you're investing, I'm concerned that you're not going to invest based on returns. You're going to invest because you like the people, because they're Black or Latina or woman of color. And I said, what? I said, look, there's 2 things. And I get that you're concerned because I care and I do a lot for my community. But in no world can it not coexist with capitalism and doing my job and being a professional and doing what I need to do. As a human being, of course, I care for a community. Of course, I'm going to serve it no matter what anybody tells me. But this person is literally unconscious bias in his mind, thinking because you're doing something that's supporting the ecosystem, it means you will not be able to invest in a way that creates and produces outside returns. It literally shook me to the core because this is someone that I have seen and trusted and felt were my ally. And at that point, I realized that bias is so real that sometimes they don't see it. I had another conversation to explain what had happened and how it had affected me. It really, it was like, should I not? Well, you should have uncomfortable conversations because if not, nothing's going to change. And we need everybody. It can't just be the sisters. It has to be the brothers and the white ones and the yellow ones and the purple ones and everybody else. And so I have this really difficult conversation, and it made me feel sad because at one point he was like, well, yeah, I see what you mean. I'm sorry you experienced that. But he didn't really accept it. And it was just, that's part of the bias that can really hurt you. And at that point I said, look, this is what unconscious bias looks like. And I know you have good intentions. You're very supportive. But I really recommend that you do some bias training. I'll do it with you because we all have bias. And to me, like, that's just rough. And so I'm seeing so much of bias. Yes, there is more of a conversation about looking at us, investing in us, but there's this unconscious bias that we're not the people who are going to create these outsized returns. And to that, I say, watch us. It is all of us on here. Just watch us. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt our feelings. It definitely hurts mine. But we have to do it for the community, and then just say, like, we have to lean on each other and lean on the people who are like, you know what, Shila, you know what, Candice, I believe in you. You're a badass woman. Look at just everything you've been able to do. And let's just do it together. We just need a couple people to believe in us. And then the rest of it will be history, and we'll make billions of dollars, and we will shut them up. And then maybe also bring some of these people over to the non-bias side. So long-winded answer, but there you go.
I love it. Yes, shut them down. Okay, anybody else want to respond?
I would say, I mean, to sort of echo, I think you mentioned, you know, you can do hard. And one of my clients is the author Glennon Doyle, and her whole tagline is, I can do hard things. And so I often think about the things that we do. I think there have been so many hurdles along the way. I don't think any great entrepreneur or business, or, you know, business person will say it was smooth sailing or it was a smooth road. But I think there were pivotal moments in my life where I learned lessons that I needed to learn. Like, I would never take those things away. Very early on, I will say I let my naivete get the best of me, and I hired the wrong people. And so it took me so much longer to build. You know, I'm a firm believer in building my castle with bricks and not with sand. And in the very beginning, I can for sure say I was building with sand. And it took me a few years to get it together, but it made me rebuild things a lot stronger. Now, I will say, as people that have encountered any sort of challenges or people that have had to jump hurdles, sometimes we are victims of our own psychological warfare. So personally, for me, one of the challenges, or one of the hard lessons that I had to learn early, is that I was wearing, and I read this somewhere, that I was wearing armor for battles that I no longer had to fight. And so making up the stories in my head that you have to fight, you have to fight. And it was like, sis, you don't have to fight anymore. You've made the case study. You have built this whole thing. You have built this thing, and stop carrying around that full book bag full of books. You can take the book bag, you can take the books out, and you can take the book bag off. So I think sometimes this psychological warfare of us telling ourselves these stories that are not true, personally for me, I think those have been some of the biggest challenges of trying to get ready for a battle, put on this armor with all of this weight for things that I no longer have to fight.
Preach it, girl. Preach it.
I'm like, where's my wine? I have water. I need a drink. After that, yes, I'm like snapping to that. Speak the truth. So I'm going to read something that was uncovered in a report from Morgan Stanley, and it says that investors cite that displaying confidence is disproportionately important for women and minority-owned businesses. 24% of investors say that a confident applicant is important when considering a woman-owned business, and 23% say the same when considering a minority-owned business, compared to only 14% when considering businesses in general. The same is true for needing to deliver a convincing pitch. And we all know this is bullshit, right? So, Rakia, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and you have an amazing brand. You've built a multi-million-dollar PR business representing clients such as Ashley Graham, Serena Williams, and you are probably the first African-American woman ever featured in Dell Small Business. I remember when I saw you on the commercial, and I was like, wait, is that Rakia? Is that a Black woman? Oh my God. And I mean, I think you wowed so many people when they did that small business campaign. And I think it really just inspired a lot of people to see you in that campaign, honestly. And then Shila, you're no nonsense. Everybody says Shila for president. We're here, you preach here. you know nonsense, get on board, move out of my way or whatever, get it done with your fun. And so, when you are carrying such a weight on your shoulders and people are looking up to you and all of you on the panel, how do you, should we walk into situations with our guard up, anticipating gender and or racial bias? Like how do you all handle that situation? Obviously it's in the back of your mind, but how do you handle that, knowing you're going to go into this situation, knowing they're going to be like, this little Black girl, this Black woman, this Latina woman, this whatever, how do you all deal with that?
So I'm not walking in with any of that. I'm walking in like I belong in the room. If I bought a ticket, I paid for it. Where's my seat? And I'll give you an example. So there is the CFA Society in New York, the Chartered Financial Analysts. And last year I got invited from a family office who wanted me to just be exposed to, what's happening in the ecosystem, in the investor ecosystem. So I walk in the room. At the time, our fund was only $10 million. And so they were talking about like $300 billion funds, $400 billion fund. And there was this guy at the end who had a social impact fund. It was about 250 million. And at that time I was really thinking about social impact. So I was like, I really am going to catch him when he's done with the panel. So I walk over, there's one guy in front of me and then I'm next. And so people start to line up behind him or line up beside me. So when he was done, when I tell you these white men swarmed him like I was invisible, I'm 5'11". I probably had on 3-inch heels that day. And so what I did, I reached my hand out like as far as I could and said, hi, I'm next. My name is Shila Nieves-Burney, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking forward to talking to you. And they backed up. All the men who were waiting, they backed up. So I had my conversation. I go to the back. I was getting ready to get some coffee or something. And so one of the men, I call them the lurchers. One of the lurchers came over and said, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you. I really just wanted to talk to the guy. I really apologize, blah, blah, blah. Here's my card. I would love to talk to you about what you're doing. Now, I don't want to talk to him, but I did want him to know that he was rude that day and to be visible, to see people. When you see people, make sure they're visible to you. I'm not invisible. And so for me, I walk in with that in my head. And for us, it's so important for me to encourage every other woman, especially Black women, to know that you have everything you need when you walk in the room. I walk in the room on the shoulders of other Black women who thought about me very early in my career and decided I was worth taking under their wings and doing some things with. It would behoove me to walk in and think that I'm less than, knowing that these women have spent all that time with me, encouraging me, making me believe in myself. And then I go in a room and I'm like, oh wait, it's all white men. I can't say nothing while I'm here. I gotta cower down. And so that's how I walk in the room. That's how I'm telling entrepreneurs to walk in the room. You know your stuff, talk about your stuff. All that other stuff, biases are gonna come up. You're gonna have to deal with it when they come up, right? And I'm not saying get in a fight or do some stuff, but be very professional about your stuff, making sure that they understand this is your stuff, you have it, you know it, and to respect that. And so that's what I encourage women to do, to walk in with the confidence that's already in them.
I love that. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh no, Rakia, you go first.
I was just gonna just say, I feel the same way. My dad raising me as when he was raising me and raising us, I have 2 sisters, I was always the shortest in the class, always the smallest. I always had the biggest glasses. So I was always a target, because I was what they called me, the well-dressed nerd. That was my brand throughout grammar school and high school.
Rakia, it's working for you though.
And I've been wearing glasses since the kindergarten.
It's working.
I'm the same person I've been since kindergarten. But my father always said, Rakia, when you walk into the room, I want you to walk circles around people. People won't be able to mess with you if you can talk. And he would say, Rakia, you can talk your way out of a brown paper bag. This is my dad. He would always, you would talk your way out of a bag if somebody was holding you. And so I learned that. And I do think that my father instilled this confidence in me that I think people do need. I am grateful for that. But he always told me, you're really smart. You will walk circles around people. And so I take that in meetings today, whether I'm meeting with a Morgan Stanley or a SoftBank or an Airbnb or a Revlon or someone on one of the celebrity teams that we're with. If you can have your data and you have dotted your I's and crossed your T's, you should not be moved. You cannot be unwavered. And so it's the same frame of mind. I think, Sheila, you were saying something that made me think about people that are trying to bring their seats to these tables. But guess what? We're building the dang tables. We don't need to bring the seat. And if you do your homework and you dot your I's and you cross your T's and you're operating, because we are in this space of data. So if you bring the data to the table and you're not operating off of a hunch. Now, I'm a feelings person. I said in the very beginning, I believe in energy. But I'm not going to go into any meeting saying, I think I feel maybe so. Well, according to this recent report, Joy, you started off with the question. According to this report, 57% of blah, 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 blah. And what I'm going to deduce from that is that maybe this should be our plan. I never walk in. People don't trust feelings in people. People trust data. So if you can let your data and your human perspective and your human storytelling work for you, you have built something that's ironclad that should not be wavering. Now, I know a lot of us are susceptible to the biases. We live in a world that does this. I mean, this world was built to tear. The people that look like this on the Zoom, it was built to tear. It wasn't built for us. It might have been built by us, but it wasn't built for us. But I think what we need to do moving forward is be the smartest. To me, it's being able to walk those circles, because I do think, yes, data does back up emotional intelligence. I think we need a mixture of both. And I think as we continue to move on these pathway forwards, we need to be inspiring, informing, and educating those around us that look like us so that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's at all times as well.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely correct. And so, three of us on this panel are in venture, and it is so important that when we go into a room, that the same thing applies, that the data just can speak for itself, that there are absolutely zero feelings around a venture capital table. No one cares. They only care about how they're going to get their money back. So when we go in, that's what we have to do. And what I've leveraged over the last few years is just really great mentors, majority peers, who've been there and know how to speak the entire language. So they have ripped apart my pitch from top to bottom. We've changed out words because I might say something a certain way, and it's not about code switching, it's about using the language of venture. And so making certain that we are doing that and being prepared in that way. And then, adding your own sauce to it, absolutely. But there's been a lot of kind of relearning of understanding what a majority LP is going to want to hear, because they're used to a certain type of language and code, and they pattern match. And so there are certain things that I need to match to the pattern so that they then invest. And so that's what I think I have to do when I get to the room.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that from my perspective, I want to change some of that. I think that there should be humanity in everything that we do. Absolutely, data speaks, but I think that's exactly why when we create these outside returns for our funds, we're able to then shift the culture, because I don't think that in a business that's really about people, especially in early stage, that it can be so sterile and just about data, because ultimately we're investing in people. And so on that note, we do have to learn the game so we can play it. But for me, one of the things that I'd like to do, and part of my vision, is to shift that narrative, shift the narrative of how this venture capital industry works, how we think of who is the check writer and who are the founders that we're funding. But 100% data is really important, guys. But I think emotions too. I mean, just thinking about like all the mental health stuff that we've talked about, this stuff just sometimes it just kills you inside. And you just have to remember, I think a good question is what keeps you going, because you need to remind yourself of that. Not all the time, but certainly there are tougher days than others.
Yeah, I would say though, Lolita, I think there's kind of two sides to it, right? It's the getting the money and then giving the money. And so as I'm getting the money, it is all about the numbers. When I'm giving the money, it's the culture of what I'm building as a fund. And so, yes, there is a lot of things that have to be shifted, but I think the getting, there's still a thing that has to happen. But I think we're also running different funds. And so we're not a social impact fund at all. And so there are certain things that the type of LP that I'm going after is looking for. And we are building a culture around our founders, but the culture around the LPs we're working with, there's going to be, it's a long road to get there.
Yeah, no, and I'm not a social impact fund either, but what I guess what I'm saying is this, that the existing LP base maybe it is the way it is. But what I'm saying is that I do consider and think about who are the LPs that we take money from and who are these people. And you know, it's a double-edged sword, and we have to make tough decisions at the end of the day, who we take money from. And to me, this is an area that I'd like to change. But in the business of venture capital, we're in it to create great returns for sure. I just want to work with really good people too. That's just the dream.
So, and I want to add to this if I could. So, and I agree. I mean, I think there's great points on both sides. We definitely lead with data. That's how we got here. If the data didn't exist, there is no reason for Zane to even exist. And then the other part of that, I had a deck, and Lolita, I remember you viewed my deck, my very, very early deck. Don't talk about it because it was a mess. But then once we got a better deck, and I shared it with a young man from a family office, and he said to me, "This is not you. I know your personality. It's missing from this deck. It makes no sense for you to carry this in front of LPs and say, here's our story." And that told me that LPs wanted to know who I was. It's great to know the data, but they want to know why you, Shila, and why, why this community of entrepreneurs, and how are you set up how are you basically set up to be successful in this space? And so I had to bring my story as part of that whole entire, like how we got here, the data behind it, and then the actual story of Shila. And I hate to talk about myself in the third person, but that became clear that they wanted to know that part of me and that part of the story. So I think there's great points on both sides.
I think we're all sort of saying the same thing, but there is a moment in time where you do need both. And I think from I don't wear a VC hat. I mean, I advise VCs and I work with them. So I understand the questions that they're asking. So Shila, I can see what you're saying, and Candice and Lolita, I can see what you're saying, but there has to be clarity on what is presented. At the end of the day, people want to know what the bottom line is. How are you going to make money? No matter how passionate you are, no matter how intelligent you are. I recently, a few years ago, I had an idea. I said, well, I've built so many different brands. I'd like to try to take a stab at building something that maybe amplifies my business. And so I went to pitch an investor who had invested in LinkedIn and Uber and all of these places. And he said, listen, you are very respected in this industry. People absolutely love you. And the first time I presented it to him, he said, but you're building tech with no tech. And how is that going to make me money? And I said, well, that is a great point, sir. I will come back to you with something better. And I had to retool it and get myself knocked down like, ooh, people don't tell me no like that. But it was a hard lesson to learn, but it was a great lesson to learn so that I could equip the people around me with, here's how you sprinkle a little bit of the human interest. Here's how you implement some of the data. And here's how you really talk about an ROI, because that's what people really want to know. And so it took me 3 iterations of this, talking to him, having these very difficult conversations, all of which I showed up as my true self. With my afro, or sometimes it's with faux locks, or sometimes it's high. I change my hair all the time. But the last time it was, Rakia, this is brilliant, and I'm going to be your first angel investor. But it took human interest, it took data, and it took ROI. I don't think you can have one without the other. And I don't think that you can say it's all of this or all of this or all of that. I think you have to be, someone that mixes that perfect cocktail.
And I want to say this before you go to it, Joy. So I have
this kind of weaves into it, Shila. So I'm going to ask it, and then you could
okay.
tag on to what we're saying, because there was a question about what is the path to raising capital for your fund. And so we talked about the human components and data and stuff that's in there. And Shila, I want to give you an opportunity to finish what you were saying, but just if you all could think about that, because there are some people who are interested in starting their own funds. And so they want to know, what is the path to get there, and who are your allies? So, okay, Shila.
So just want to say this, because I had this conversation the other day with a man who I've asked to help me sort of help close this round. And he said to me, and I was given the whole diversity. And he said to me, investors are capitalists first, meaning they want their money back. Yes, it's a good cause and all of that. But at the heart of these investors, that they're capitalists. And so to Candice and Rakia's point, that part of the conversation definitely has to be, how are you going to give me a return on my investment? Has to be a part of the conversation. And so I just wanted to add that little bit. Oh, did I need to answer about the road to raising a fund?
Yeah, you can add to that one as well.
It's not paved with yellow bricks, so just understand that it is a hard road. You need to find people who, for us, it's unconventional, because we're trying to find people who are in the Southeast, bought into the Southeast, want to invest and see returns in the Southeast, and they're not, the capital is here, but they're not looking for people like me. And so I have to be very cognizant of that and who I talk to, right? I'm looking for folks who are really serious about this. My cap table is important. And so for anybody who else out there raising money, your cap table is important. Do you want to be in business with these folks for 10 years or be in a relationship, because that's what you're actually in? And so it is about finding, first of all, that first round of capital from people who are, people who know you, people who are close to you, or know somebody that's within your circle. And then once you have, for us, that initial close, then the momentum starts to kick off from there. You get some folks you've been talking to that starts to come off the fence.
Okay, Lolita, Candice, did you guys want to?
I think I'm stuck, right?
We can hear you. We can hear you. I can talk a little bit about the road. So not to harp on it, but yes, data is really important. I think portfolio construction is a really important thing. So understanding what are the numbers, what's your strategy to making your investors money is essentially at the core of the conversation of raising capital. So having your thesis around what your unique insight is, how you're going to essentially do the job of what VC is, which is sourcing deals, selecting them, investing in them, and then supporting them, stewardship. Being able to explain why you're differentiated in the market, because everyone's ultimately saying, hey, give me money so I can make you money. But you have to break it down in terms of like, here's how much money I want to raise, and here's why, and here's my strategy in terms of what the check size is, and how many companies we're going to invest in, and what kind of companies we're going to invest in, and why are we suited for this. And then the other part is also being able to set yourself apart. It's not very different from founders from that perspective, because there are many founders that are working on the same industry or the same problem, and you really need to have that differentiation moat. What is that thing that's going to make you stickier and harder for someone else to replicate, and for you to be able to take advantage and capture the market? And so for a VC perspective, it's for me, the way I think of it is, look, there's all this money on the table. I have access to all these deals that you do not, Silicon Valley, traditional status quo people. And I can bring really great deal sources, right? We're going to bring really great deals, invest in amazing founders that have been historically overlooked, not necessarily because, well, one is they're not in your network. Two is you probably don't understand the way they're looking at things and cannot identify the opportunities there. And just in general, they might not actually want to take your money. They might want to take my money. So give me your money so I can put it to work. Here's how we're going to structure this. Here's what the carry and the fee is. like just laying it down. So to Candice's point, like laying down, how am I going to make money and why me or why us if you're a team, and just putting it out there, I think is really important. And there's a data room that we all have to create too. So there's a lot of homework, a lot of data, a lot of information. But I also think that there's there's a science and an art to it. There's part science, part art, and the part art, I think it has to do a lot with who you are as a human being and how you're seeing market tailwinds, what your vision of the future is, because you're literally getting capital so you can invest in a way that others are not seeing as an opportunity to produce more money for your investors. So those would be some of the things I would cover. I don't know, Candice, what would you say?
I'd say, I mean, there's traditional and untraditional paths to get there. So I think that many of us have a fairly untraditional path to VC, but lots of folk decide that they're going to go get their MBA and kind of go into finance and hit it from that angle. Others want to go and work within a firm for a while and not necessarily go immediately from maybe being a founder to being a GP. I mean, for me, gosh, I wish I almost would have done it that way, where I went into somebody else's firm and then like learned the ropes instead of like learning on the fly here and building this plane as we're flying it. But you know, really, it's I love what lots of folks are doing, and my peers on Mentor or my peers on Twitter that are you know, kind of building their own angel portfolios and learning the game first. Better understanding what their investment strategy is. Like to Lolita's point, like you've got to kind of figure out where you're going to find the deals from, how you're going to find the network of LPs, because just because somebody's wealthy doesn't mean they're really going to put money into a fund. You know, where are you going to, you know, you've got to raise these things every 3 years. So do you have that in you? And it's going to take you a year, 2, maybe 3 years to raise it. And so do you have that kind of stamina to do it? So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. It's hard to say what the path is. You have to figure out your own path. Very, very similarly to what they were saying before. It's like being a founder. It is being a founder, 100%. You're just building a new business, and you're pitching it to investors. That's kind of it.
Absolutely. Rakia, I have a question for you from the audience. How did you realize when you were fighting unnecessary battles, and what did you do to stop?
Oh gosh. That's a whole panel within itself. Like that's a lot to unpack in like a minute or less. I think, you know, it's something that I've recently had to deal with, like in hiring practices, in taking on new clients, accepting projects. You know, I've always come from that space of thinking about or reflecting on things from the past or what happened before. And I think I've not, and to be honest, you know, I'm going to be really transparent. I've not gotten to that point where I'm not reflecting on things that have happened in the past. I have to remind myself. I don't think I've like mastered that. So whoever asked that question, I don't think that I've mastered it. I think it's something that I still work on. You know, when you in work, and trauma is different for everyone. You know, my trauma could be I hired the wrong person and they stole money from me. True story. So every time I go to hire someone, oh yes, Sheila, a lot. And so every time I go to hire someone, I think about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, but this person doesn't have the same qualities as that person to steal the money. So that's not the battle that you're fighting. So they're different. For me, it's having clarity about where I am right now, where I was before, and what do I need? What are the proper tools that I need right now in order to get to the next chapter? And I see my life in sequencing. So like we've just celebrated, we're in our celebratory 10th year of business. And so I see it as, you know, 10 years is a decade. That's a long time, but I see it as such a renewal. Thank you very much. I see it as a year of renewal and me defining what that next chapter is. So I think slowly but surely, I've gotten to realize for myself that I've built this thing and I've done all of this work. I've made the case studies of all, I've already proven myself. I don't have to fight the battles of, okay, let me do the thing to do the thing so the people can believe me. I always tell people, I think like my Clubhouse bio, I said, my work is longer and better than my bio. I'm not gonna even spend time doing bios anymore because if you don't know my work, then we don't need to talk. So I think if that's That's just the mindset that I'm in. But listen, it might be a different mindset in another 2-3 weeks or another 2 years. But it's a process.
Hashtag goals. I mean,
Thank you.
I love that. Okay, another question is, was there a breaking point when you decided, and this is for everyone, was there a breaking point when you decided it was time to start your own business venture? Professionally, it has taken me so long to move up in my career and build wealth, so there is a lot of fear in making the jump. Do you have any advice? And this is from Rosie. That's a great question.
I think so. Depending, I always like to step back and ask, where are you financially? What are your responsibilities? Make sure you keep those things grounded, because different answers could be the right ones or the wrong ones for different people. What kind of risk tolerance do you have? What kind of timeline do you have? These different elements will have implications on the answer that you'd give. But I personally, in terms of when did I decide to jump ship and do whatever I need to do, I'm I have one foot in like an operator role and another in an investor role, because I need to pay the bills, because I am a matriarch, because my fund pays me in carry, which means I don't really get money until like I have outsized returns, which is a really good incentive to make really good investments. And so to me, it's always been about where I am, what are my responsibilities, making sure I'm covering that. And then if I have extra left, and or if I want to go above and beyond, I just go and do that. And for some folks, if you have the luxury of just jumping ship, like you just start things when you're not ready, because none of us are ever really ready to do things. And we're all learning as we're going along. And so for all of those of you who are thinking about starting a fund or a startup, it's the same thing. Just definitely take care of yourself. Make sure foundationally you're good and you have a better understanding of like what this is going to take. Because if you build like a small fund, for example, even if you do get from the fee, the amount may actually turn out to be really small, because you have to hire people, because you have to pay all sorts of things. And so you have to think about the numbers and the data so you can understand, how does this fit in your life from a financial perspective? If it's not a problem, just go for it. You have nothing to lose.
I was going to say for me, so I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I never knew full-time entrepreneurship was for me. I don't know, my internet is unstable. So I didn't know full-time entrepreneurship was for me. So I had always had a business, had a side hustle. But in around 2015, I started to notice like the buzzword transition. They were going to transition folks out. And I was with a large nonprofit here. And so I had had a project management consultancy that I had been doing. And so late 2017, I was like, they're talking transition again. I'm going to be next. I'm one of the oldest. I hadn't been there that long, but I'm older compared to my peers. And so I took on a really large project to make sure that I can take on something like that if I didn't have a job. And so by time when my transition came around, I was so happy. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to start my company. And I did. In January, I launched a company called the Burney Experience. I had 6 clients right away. I was on my way until I got offered, the opportunity to source investors for a startup, and then I pivoted. But to me, I had to set myself up into Lolita's point. Your finances matter. Thank God I do have a husband who has been sort of my investor for the last few years. And I've made money through my sort of, side hustle endeavors. So I'm just saying, if you're feeling like you have that bug now, start slowly. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow. Start by taking on a few projects. I don't know what the person is interested in, but start taking on a few projects, right? And see where that goes. And if you like it, if you can start making some money off of it, I would say, but considering all finances, considering everything, start pursuing that particular entrepreneurial dream.
Yeah, I would say to Rosie, you can do anything from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So maybe instead of being on Netflix or surfing the internet, like try working on that thing for 4 hours a day. And then maybe it starts to creep into longer hours. And at that point, you're kind of, being rather mediocre at your day job. And maybe during that 4 hours of the day, you're starting to make revenue or have some sort of traction for this business idea. And so just building this thing into your day and making it part of your workday every day, I think is a way to kind of make the leap. But like many of us, I was a serial entrepreneur. So I've been doing like this sort of thing since I was 20. So a good 20 some years. Something.
Okay, I have another question from DT Ogilvy saying, what do you look for in pitches that majority VCs might not look for?
It's always the why for me, you know, and why you? How are you, you know, uniquely prepared to solve this problem? And I don't know if that's in everybody's deck, but that's what I always look for.
I'm fascinated by what the macro trends that founders are looking at and how that fits into the timing and what they're doing and their vision of how not just their company is going to make a dent, but an opinion about what the future is going to look like, and whether it's a B2B or B2C perspective, and just being thoughtful about seeing nuances and connecting dots, making lines about what the future holds. Because I think that's where you can have this massive opportunity to create unicorns. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other investors look at this too, but I'm particularly really interested in how's this person thinking. And the second thing that I also think about and I try to get a grasp on is, where did this person start and with what, and how much have they accomplished with that? Because oftentimes I think one of the biggest downsides of pattern matching in the ecosystem is that sometimes investors will compare someone's chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10. And to me, I'm trying to figure out how resourceful, how scrappy, how gritty is this founder, because to me, that will be part of my investment thesis. Hey, if we put this steroid juice or rocket fuel into this rocket, it's just going to launch. The reason why they're here is because they needed this capital to go and launch. And so those would be the two things that I really think about a lot and like to learn from founders.
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily I think I'm looking for the same thing that everyone else is looking for. I think that many of us here on the panel, is the things that we're not looking for. So I don't care what your mom and dad did for a living. And I don't care if your husband supports you and he's paying all the bills and I don't need to pay you the same amount. So it's the biases that I'm not holding that my majority peers are having. So I'd flip it around and say the things that I'm not looking at. Because I think that, you know, we are very similar to our majority peers as investors, and that we're great investors, right? Just like that. But we don't hold the same amount of bias as they do.
Okay. And then another question from LaMonica, kind of along the same vein, but are there any prerequisites to working with VCs and angel investors? Any prerequisites that you all could think of?
Gosh, I feel like we need hours to talk about that one, because there's so many variations. But I actually get this question of like, where should I fundraise? What do I need to do for VC capital? And venture capital is not for everybody, is what I always say. And I see this so much in a pattern in our community that actually wrote a post about choosing your fundraising strategy that suits your business. And so I'll drop it in the chat, but essentially, depending on what kind of business you have, what kind of business you want to build, is different types of funding that you might want to go after. And then in terms of what are the requirements for venture capitalists, they can vary. So some may have like requirements of you must have revenue. Others may be pre-revenue. Others may be we need to have XYZ thing. And so that's where you need to do some of that homework in terms of understanding who are the best aligned investors if venture capital does turn out to be the right fit for you.
And for us, our requirement is that we're looking at tech-enabled companies that we want to invest in. So it has to be a tech-enabled solution. It has to be primarily here in the Southeast. And of course, diverse founders and diverse teams is our strongest conviction. But outside of that, we're looking for good deals. We're looking, for us, we're a founder first fund, meaning we're looking for founders who in my opinion, solving a problem. And for me, it's like, let me see how I can, and both of our, we've only made 2 investments out of our fund so far. Both of those were problem solvers. They found, one found a pain point in MailChimp and created a company around it and had MailChimp come and be one of his investors. I'm looking for folks like that who are able to bring people along with them while they're attempting to solve this problem. And so those are some of the things that we look for the companies that we're investing in.
Yeah, I can say I think we all have a different thesis. For us, we're looking for companies that are in market, they're generating some sort of revenue or have traction. Most of the companies that we're investing in have hit that $100,000 of monthly recurring revenue. And so they're not kind of like a pre-seed stage company. We have certain verticals we invest in, as well as obviously the demographic requirement. And then I can say kind of finally, we just invest in the mighty middle of the country. So it's a geography slightly larger than the Midwest. And so if you ever want to know kind of what the mighty middle is, there's a Kaufman report that kind of explains what the geography looks like.
Yeah, and I guess so. I guess I should talk about the community fund. So we don't need to have $100,000 in revenue. In fact, we at the community fund will look at pre-revenue, sometimes even pre-product, but oftentimes where traction is better. We are operating in pre-seed seed. So what we are really looking for, though, is making sure that it's aligned with our thesis of community driven. So we really believe that community driven companies are the ones that are going to become these unicorns, as we've seen with Airbnb, with Peloton, with, I don't know, these companies, Glossier. And so the way that we define that is, does a company's customers identify as members? Do these members have a space to create value for each other and then start that marketing sales flywheel? So that thesis alignment is really important. And we also do have a Delaware C Corp requirement. And this actually is pretty standard for most US VCs. So having a Delaware C Corp is a good idea if you're going to go out for venture capital. Outside of that, I would just say that we're just looking to fund the best founders out there.
Okay, and I know Candice has to jump off. So Preston, thank you for that, Lolita. Preston, did you want to close us out? And thank you everybody for your
thank
question.
you. Well, I'm gonna let you close out. I just want to say a few
Okay.
words because this is your party. I just want to give a special thanks to Shila, to Rakia, to Candice, to Lolita. I can't thank you enough for joining us this evening and sharing your insights and wisdom. Like I said earlier, I do miss each and every one of you. I hope to see you soon. The other thing I want to say is, in the context of everything that was shared tonight, if you're an entrepreneur out there, it is essential that you insert yourself into a community and a network of your entrepreneurship peers. Get involved in the program, get involved in the network to get all this information, because all the information is shared tonight is going to come in and you might forget some of it. Right. But in order for you to really be part of the community and get, position yourself for success, insert yourself into an accelerated program, into an entrepreneur program, to meet mentors, to meet, investors. You've got to be able to be part of that. And so with Startup Sistas, we welcome you to be part of the Startup Sistas network, but wherever you are, be it Florida, LA, Detroit, wherever, try to find that place. If you don't know, reach out to us and we will point you in the right direction, but become part of it so that we can help you scale and grow your idea in what you're trying to do. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. The panelists, Joy, what can I say?
I mean, you took it away. So thank you everyone so much for coming. Let's give a shout out to all these amazing panelists. And I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much for doing this. I mean, the information that you share is invaluable. I appreciate your transparency because a lot of the times people blanket the experiences and they sugarcoat. So I appreciate you all sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and, you know, getting to the truth of the different industries. So thank you all so much. We are at www.divinc.org. We just closed our applications for the spring cohort for Houston. So excited about bringing in a new cohort this spring. And that is sponsored by Verizon. The first time we're able to give our cohort $10,000 for participating. So we are excited about that, but we are definitely looking forward to learning a lot about you all. And yeah, follow us on Instagram at We Are Div Inc. And thank you again for your amazing questions, and look forward to hearing from you guys soon. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you. Thank you,
Joy and
Rakia.
Preston.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Simon. Thank you, Candice. Lolita, thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.